What is going on, everyone? FrancoTech here, back with another review video, and today I'll be taking a look at another mid-range device. This is the Samsung Galaxy J7, and you might be thinking, hasn't this phone been out for a while now? And the answer to that is yes. However, this is the 2016 version of the phone, so it has been upgraded since last year's model. So without wasting any time, let's get straight into the review. To start off the review, I'm going to be taking a look at the design and build quality of the J7, which is actually pretty decent for this price point. It doesn't really feel all that cheap, and it's obviously nothing close to a premium build, but it does feel really nice in the hands, except for the back panel. The back panel is where I feel the phone really lacks in build quality. It's a flat, non-textured back that looks and feels cheap. Essentially, this is the same back panel as the one found on the Galaxy Core Prime, which is a very low budget device, except this back panel has been enlarged. This is a pretty big downside to the phone, but really to some, it's not going to be that big of a deal. For the display, we have a 5.5-inch Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 720 by 1280, and for someone that's been using a smartphone with a Quad HD display for a while now, I honestly did not notice much of a difference when switching over to this display. In fact, I was actually impressed because of that. 720p is still a great resolution, and the display on the J7 is really pleasing to look at with some great viewing angles and accurate colors. Being that it's a 5.5-inch display and has a pixel density of 267, pixels still aren't all that noticeable, and that's thanks to the Super AMOLED display. This display is probably the best part about the phone. It makes it very enjoyable to watch movies and videos, and looks great when gaming also. Audio also plays a big factor when it comes to having an enjoyable viewing experience. While the display is great on this phone, the speakers are not. What we have here is a single rear-facing speaker that can be found right next to the camera, and the speaker is actually pretty mediocre. The audio quality isn't really all that great, and my biggest problem with it is that it is not loud. I constantly found myself trying to raise the volume because I couldn't really hear the video I was watching, only to find out that it was already at its maximum volume. And that's a pretty big issue for me, being that I'm always watching videos on my phone. Also, because it is a rear-facing speaker, when you have the phone lying flat on its back, it gets extremely muffled and you can't really hear anything. Now, I know this is a mid-range device, and again, to some this might not matter as much, but for the price of the phone, I feel like Samsung could have done a little more with the speaker. For the software, the J7 is actually running on Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow with Samsung skin on top. Essentially, what we have here is the same software that you will find on the Samsung Galaxy S7. Before, I was someone that extremely disliked Samsung skins because they were full of bloatware and drastically hindered performance, but this time around, Samsung has really cleaned up their UI, making it a lot more enjoyable. Will I be switching over to something that's closer to stock Android? Most likely, but then again, I wouldn't mind using this version of Samsung's UI for a while. As for the hardware, the J7 is running on an Exynos 7580, 2GB of RAM, and has an internal memory storage of 16GB, and I'm honestly really impressed by the speed of this phone. I haven't ran into much noticeable lag with my usage of the phone, and everything seems to run really smooth. Now, this might be because the phone is running on Marshmallow, which is supposed to improve performance, but either way, for this price, the performance is actually really good. The J7 is being powered by a 3000 mAh battery, and at first I was really impressed with the battery life of this phone. I would constantly get around 5.5+ hours of screen on time, and the phone would last me all day without any issues, and I wouldn't even have to worry about charging it. However, after a week of using the phone, I did notice the battery life did drop in usage. Now I'm getting around 4.5 hours of screen on time, which is still pretty standard, but I do wish it wouldn't have dropped. My usage all stayed the same, and I didn't make any changes on the phone, so I'm not sure why the battery life dropped. Either way, battery life is decently good and should last most of the day. Lastly, we have the camera. For the main rear shooter, we have a 13-megapixel camera with LED flash, and for the front, we have a 5-megapixel front-facing camera with LED flash. Yes, this phone has a forward-facing flash, which is a pretty cool idea. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who have been wanting a phone with a forward-facing flash, and with this phone, we have it. It is really blinding sometimes, especially at night, but it's still a cool feature to have that can be very useful, especially to those who constantly take selfies. Picture quality on both the cameras is pretty much what you would come to expect from a phone at this price point, which is decent. You're not going to get super crisp and really detailed pictures from these cameras, and a lot of the time you're going to have to take more than one picture just to make sure the object came out clear. However, with the right lighting, this camera is still capable of taking some pretty nice photos. Although 13 megapixels still sounds like a good amount, this camera is a bit disappointing. I have seen 8 megapixel cameras that can do a better job than what this camera can do, so this is one of those rare cases where more pixels doesn't necessarily mean better image quality. In the end, I have to say that the Samsung Galaxy J7 is still a really good phone that you can get at this price range that runs Marshmallow straight out of the box. It doesn't have the best build quality, and the camera on it also is not that great, but the display, performance, and battery life all make this phone a very good deal for the price. Of course, there are phones out there that are in the same price range and are better than the J7, but I still believe that this is a great phone, just not the best. So that's gonna wrap up this review. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and I'll see you guys in my next review.